Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Tucker. Behind me, this is my Drift Miata. We're gonna tackle some more work in the garage. Have you ever been in a little fender bender that caused a little bit of minor damage to the exterior of your car? Today we're gonna do a little bit of a DIY on how to pull some of these dents. I am no auto body expert. I have never done this before, but I've seen a few videos and other things online that seems pretty simple to pull stuff out. I've been in a few little minor crashes on the drift track, as you could tell by the intro of this video. I have hit this corner panel maybe 3 different times, back here, and right here. All while drifting in an outer zone, coming a little bit too fast into another car. For the 2024 drift season, I'm gonna be running a little bit wider and bigger sized tire, which may require a fender flare on the fenders. To be able to install something like that, you need a little bit of a clean fender to do that. This fender on the driver's side rear is not that. It is dented up in a few different spots. We're gonna try and pull some of those dents out the best we can with some basic tools that I have in my garage. Today we're going to be building a little bit of a fixture that's going to mount to the 2x4s in the wall and utilize some industrial style hot glue on some metal pieces to use a ratchet strap to try and yank some of these dents out. So the few materials that I have that I'm going to use today are some 11 gauge flat steel, some 1/2 inch plywood from an old project I did, a grinder with metal cutoff wheels, my industrial glue gun, a heat gun to potentially try and save some of the paint from cracking, some drywall screws, 2 inch, and a 5/32 drill bit to pre-drill the holes for the screws. And of course, in my case, welding helmet with a grinding shield and my welder. If you don't have these pieces of equipment, you can get some cheap equipment from, say, Harbor Freight or Northern Tool. It will cost you a little bit extra money if you want to get a welder machine and a welding hood that is a little bit higher quality. I, however, am already a metal fabricator, so I have this equipment available to me. I do need to fabricate a few things with the 11 gauge flat steel for the ratchet strap to be able to hook onto to pull, and then we will go ahead, attach that to the car with the hot glue and let that cure and set for a while. Then we will work on securing the 1/2 inch plywood to the 2x4s. I was originally going to screw in the metal directly to the 2x4s. That may not work how I think it will. I don't want to put too much stress on individual 2x4s, so I'm going to attach that plywood across 3 2x4s to allow a stronger pull. So let's get right into it and start working on this. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take a couple of small pieces off this sheet that I have here. I'm going to take maybe a 2 inch piece, and then I'm going to cut that in half the long ways just to be able to make a piece that fixes onto that, and then drill a hole through that for the ratchet strap to attach to. I seem to have misplaced my speed square, so we're going to have to just use a straight edge and make a couple measurements to make the lines that we need for cutting. I can, however, utilize this tool, but I need to find my 90 degree and can use this as my square. Just like that. And that should be able to work for the small things that we're gonna do. Make a line with my paint marker, and we're gonna make a cut. When using any type of grinder, whether it be a sanding disc or a cutoff wheel, it is recommended that you wear hearing protection and use some sort of a face shield to be able to protect in case a cutoff wheel were to explode. You don't want that to stick in your face or cause any severe damage. There's piece number 1. We're going to now cut it in half this direction so that we can weld it together and drill a hole in the middle. Take another measurement here just to center this out. We got a 2 3/4 inch piece. We're just going to take the center of 2 3/4, which is about 1 3/8. If it's off by a 1/16 or so, no big deal. And there you have it. Now we have 2 little pieces. We're going to affix it just like that. And we're going to apply heat when we weld this little T-joint here, and it should hopefully create a little bit of a bow on the bottom piece that's going to lay kind of a radius into the dent on the car. Before we weld this to the other tab, I am going to use my step bit. I did not mention that at the beginning of the video, to add a hole right in the middle. We're not gonna go all the way through, that's 3/4 inch hole. That's a little bit too big for what we need. We're just gonna go maybe to around the 3/8 mark, just to open that up just enough for the ratchet strap hook to go through. That should hopefully be big enough for the ratchet strap hook. We'll give it a test fit. So this ratchet strap hook is about only 1/4 inch, so that's gonna be perfect. The next step will be attaching these two pieces via a couple of welds on both sides. The welder I will be using is the Lincoln Electric Easy Mig 140. All right, so I made the switch over to my 030 solid wire. My welder's shut off. The power in this garage is not quite enough to be able to lay some heavy welds. But I at least was able to get this piece welded. It didn't really pull as much as I was hoping it would, but that should be okay. Maybe I can take a hammer to it and kind of roll that edge off so it doesn't dig into the material on the car when I try and pull on this. So not super great welds because this is not a high-powered welder, but it's still gonna do the job. Plenty of penetration through the bottom. All right, I gave this thing a few little taps on the ground and it did kind of round out those edges. It's very hot, need to let this cool down a little bit before I try and stick this on the car. I'm not looking to melt the paint off the side of the car. However, with the hot glue gun in this piece, it may pull some of the paint off. We'll see at this point. As long as I can get the dents to move, I'm fine with it. All right, while that piece cools a little bit, we're gonna mock up that 1/2 inch plywood on the wall, get some holes pre-drilled into that so it doesn't crack that wood apart, and then affix it onto the 2x4s. So now we're just gonna kind of hold this up to this, eyeball centering it on these studs, but we're gonna mark where each of these studs actually sits. So we have an idea of where these holes need to be. Now we have those. We'll take my 11 gauge flat steel, lay it across as a straight edge, and then we can kind of get that set up to where the stud is and get some holes pre-drilled in this sheet. We'll get this kind of laid out on here as a straight edge. Take my makeshift square for the day, line it up right here, and get this piece fairly straight there. Now that we have that lined up like that, we'll take our paint stick and make that mark all the way across. Now we kind of have a reference point. We know the studs are 1.5 inches. So as long as I keep it in within a certain range here, I don't need to draw 2 lines on that piece of wood. We'll just move on to the next one. And there it is. We got each of those lines marked out. Now we're just making a couple of marks on here where we want to drill it into the studs and affix this board to the wall. Now we're gonna take our drill with our 5/32 bit to pre-drill holes in the plywood to make attaching it to the wall just a little bit easier. Then we don't have to drill and force that screw through both pieces of wood, only into the 2x4s. There we have it. All those holes are pre-drilled. Now we just gotta take the screws and a drill and affix that to the wall. All right, we have the plywood attached to the wall with the screws and at an approximate height for what we're going to be utilizing it for. Next step, we will be taking the other pieces or piece of the 11 gauge material, drilling some holes in it so we can attach it and drill it to this plywood piece as well. I don't want to just have this flimsy piece just in here and leave all that extra wiggle room in between the studs. Then I can affix this to the entire plywood all the way across. So hopefully it'll be a little stronger and be able to pull a little bit better on those dents. What I need to do with this next piece of 11 gauge flat is make a couple more pieces of this top piece with the hole in it to be able to weld onto a couple of different spots on here for different pulling locations along the plywood. So I will go ahead and make those couple of cuts and get those pieces welded onto this, and I'll show you that when I got that ready. Okay, so we got the 4 little tabs and the holes drilled, ready to be welded to the longer piece of 11 gauge steel. But right now, we're gonna take a quick break from that. I am letting the glue gun warm up and get nice and toasty so that we can put some glue on this tab and attach it to the dent on the quarter panel. So we are going to attack this dent first because I can kind of access it from the inside to assist when pulling this. I can give it some taps on the inside to see if we can pull this out. But before we stick some glue on this, I want to make sure this surface is nice and clean so it has the best chance to adhering as best as it can to this side of the panel. We're just going to take a little bit of brake cleaner and clean this off, wipe off any dust and debris the best we can, so that the glue will stick very well, or the hopes is that it will stick very well. So we're gonna put that little tab pretty much right in the center where it's the deepest part of the dent to try and pull the entire thing out. I don't know if it's gonna work. I've seen it done in the past from other people. We will see. This is something I've never done before. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if it works, great. If it doesn't, we at least tried, right? So just to show you guys kind of where this is gonna go, we're gonna put it basically in the center, and how I have the ends bent and rolled a little bit fits almost perfectly in the center of this dent so that we can pull with the ratchet strap towards the wall, and hopefully this dent just comes right out. Got a lot on here, cover the whole piece. Hopefully it stays warm for long enough. Basically coat this whole thing with the glue, and then we'll get it smashed on there while it's still warm. And just hold that there. We won't press it too hard, just enough to secure it. But we got it so the glue is basically pushing outside of the tab just enough. Yeah, this looks like the glue is staying nice and soft for long enough for it to actually get into place. Before, when the tab was cold, it was almost starting to solidify before I got it onto the panel. So now, hopefully this is gonna be enough, because now it's still like, it's keeping it warm enough, so it'll have plenty of time to cure. So now that it's on, we'll take that and we'll just leave that sit for a little while and let that harden, and hopefully it's gonna hold to where we can give this a yank real quick. All right, we got this thing secured onto the panel, and you can kind of see a little bit of movement from the dent. It's hard to see on the camera, but I can see it with my naked eye here. So we're gonna leave that sit for a little longer. We're gonna go ahead and attach those tabs to the long piece, drill some holes in that long piece, and then attach that to this plywood piece. So then we could hook up the ratchet strap to the plywood piece and that metal piece with the tabs, and try and give that a pull just a little at a time. Hopefully that doesn't break the glue off. If it does, we'll maybe try and fix it one more time and just put light pressure with the ratchet strap and push from the inside. We'll see if we can get this dent to move. Before we go ahead and weld the tabs to this, we're gonna make our lives a little bit easier and pre-drill these holes. We're just gonna utilize the 5/32 drill bit once again, because that's all we need for the size for the screws. And we're gonna drill holes throughout this piece a little bit to attach it to the plywood. We got all those holes drilled. Now we're gonna tack weld these little tabs onto that full piece and then start welding a little bit. We got these tabs tacked on around where these screw holes are, so that there's 4 screws holding each mounting location and pull point. All right, we are gonna go ahead and weld these now. We are not gonna weld them solid on both sides. It does not need to be that much. We're just gonna do maybe 1/2 inch stitches in the corners, and that should be good. If I do any more than 1/2 inch welds at a time, typically this power unit will shut itself off because there's not enough current going through the machine to weld at that kind of output. And there it is. We got these little tabs welded. Again, doesn't have to be real big welds. It's not thick material. So welding anything bigger than these little welds is just a waste of wire and gas. So now that this is nice and toasty because I just welded it, I'm gonna upgrade to my heavy leather gloves rather than just these working gloves, so I can grab this and screw it into the plywood. Well, first attempt failed before I even got to turn the camera on. All I was doing was snugging it up a little bit and it popped right off. So, attempt number 1 failed. Let's get this cleaned up. We'll heat it up again. We'll try and reattach it to the vehicle with maybe a little bit more glue. I'm not sure if that's gonna be what it needs, but we'll go for attempt 2. We didn't even get to put a lot of pressure on this to see if it was gonna work. A little disappointing, but attempt number 2 coming at ya. This time I'm gonna have the camera on when I attach this, because I wanna see if this works. Then you guys can see if it works too. All right, so We're gonna slowly add a little bit of pressure here. Nothing crazy. Just a little bit to hold it. All right, let's kind of give this a go. We'll give a little bit of pressure, a little at a time, just to see if this is gonna move. Basically one click at a time. A little bit of pressure on here now. Not sure if I can see it moving just yet. But it's making some progress. It almost looks like it's pulling a little bit on the top. So this might be success. I don't know yet. I almost want my face shield on just in case this thing goes bang. But it looks like it is moving. Safety first. Let's not get our eyes taken out. Well, it started to move, but it couldn't take the pressure. Shucks. Well, rather than redoing new glue, we're just gonna take the heat gun and reheat this glue up and stick it right back onto the car. We'll try it again. It did look like it moved it a little bit. It's not quite as big of a divot. So, we might be onto something here. Attempt number 3, technically. I have this moved in closer this direction, so it's not quite as steep of an angle pulling away from the car. It's more of straight on with it. So we'll put a little bit of pressure on it, not as much as we did before because it flew off pretty hard, it smoked my hand. We're gonna put a little bit of tension, and I'm gonna take my dead blow hammer from the inside and give a little bit of taps and add pressure as I'm adding some taps from the inside, and see if we can slowly move this out without having the glue break this time. So I got just a smidge of pressure right now. We're just gonna add 1 or 2 more clicks. Maybe just the one. One more. And hopefully it doesn't fly off here. All right, we got that extra click. Got a little bit, you can kind of hear the tension. It's not a lot, but it's enough to maybe have this thing move. And I can already see it starting to flex a little bit on the dent. So let's go inside the trunk, give it a little bit of tap, and see if we can help assist this out without breaking the glue. So it is moving. It's kind of wrinkling the paint a little bit. But now we'll add a little bit more pressure because it loosened up. See if we can go one more click again. Yeah, we won't go too much. I don't want to test my luck here. We'll just move it a little bit. I don't know if you guys can see this here, but it is starting to pull this dent out. I kind of tapped a little too hard on the top, so there's a little bit of a ripple. But hey, a small ripple compared to a giant dent, I think that's gonna work. Let's try and give this some more taps. Aww. I tapped a little bit too close to where the glue was, and I think it just got a little too brittle and popped it off. So, we're making progress though. This dent is coming out. That's good. Let's reheat this glue again. Maybe we'll just kind of scrape it off, and I can kind of save the glue, and we'll heat it and just smear it right back onto this tab and stick it back on the car. Keep moving with this dent. All right, we're giving this maybe attempt 4 or 5. I can't remember exactly what it is. We'll put just a light pressure on this again. Just do 1 click at a time. So we got at least a little bit of snug. We'll see if we can go just a hair more. All right, that's pretty. That's got a little bit of tension on that. I did not wait super long for this to get completely cured and dry and like cold. I want this to be a little bit flexible for the glue because it's got a little squish to it, not a lot, just enough to where it's not like brittle and gonna hopefully pop out. So I'm gonna go back inside, kind of give it a little bit more taps down towards the bottom. I might need to take like a wood stick or something down there to help kind of tap on this side and then down in here to kind of start to release some of that pressure. Once we get enough pressure released and it's starting to come out, we'll add a little more tension to the strap and just see how long and how much we can actually get this thing to move. We'll take basically like my rubber mallet, and I might actually go with this end in there so it's a bigger spot hitting on that, and it'll take some of the shock from the dead blow out of it, so it hopefully won't break this tab off. But then I'm gonna hit the end of this and kind of just work it around, kind of start here and kind of tap down around the radius of that fender. Just a little bit too much there, and it started to pull the glue off of that. So it didn't completely come off. So maybe I'll try and get a little bit more glue on that and let it cure just a little bit longer, and we'll go another round. Probably hard to see the panel actually flexing, but it's putting pressure on it. I think it's just really hard to pull along this bend on the bottom. And that might be what's holding us back a little bit. So we'll try and continue working the top side down, but the top side's pretty decent now. It's getting its curvature back. It's not as dented. So we'll just little by little, we're moving that dent out towards the bottom. I'm gonna move to this dent right above the wheel. I wanna see if this thing can move a little bit too, because this is a little bit more open. There's not like a bend like down here. The dent doesn't actually go all the way down to where it creases here. So I'm gonna see if I can get this thing to move a little bit. Maybe start up here, kind of work our way down just like we did with that one. This one, I'll come back to that farther back one in a little bit. I just wanna try and fix this section real quick. If this can move, great. I can't access the inside of this fender through the back or through the front. It has a steel or like sheet metal arch inside here, so I can't access the back side to get that to tap out. So I have to rely on the glue and the come along or the ratchet strap to yank this one out. So we're gonna reheat the glue, stick that on here, and we'll give this side a try. All right, I think we got this thing secured enough to where we can start to give it a little bit of tension and get this to start moving. We're going on the second tab here, so it's almost straight across with a little bit of an angle to kind of pull this top corner. Put an extra layer of protection on this hand, so I got 2 pairs of gloves on this hand. This is my pull hand, so that if it comes off, it doesn't smack my hand, doesn't hurt me, and wearing the face shield. So let's put a little pressure on this and see if it'll start to move. Not quite. Well, I'll maybe give this a few more tries and keep going at it, and I'll give you guys an update when I start to see some movement. I'm starting to massage this section out right here from the inside with my dead blow and a rubber mallet. So I have the rubber mallet side pushing out on the fender so that it's giving it a little bit more of a rounded edge. So I can kind of start to smooth that out. There is a lot of glue still stuck on here, and I made the mistake of flipping around the wood side down in here, and it's starting to make a couple little dimples, so I'm not super happy about that, but at this point it's already there. I can't change what I did there, other than maybe just like trying to tap it back in, which it's just going to take a little bit of massaging and finesse. It's a drift car, it's fine, it's not that big of a deal. There's not a huge dent right here anymore. I got most of it worked out, which is really good. So this dent right here, the nice thing is I'm able to hit it from the inside to help push it out. Up here I can't, so I have to rely on this glue and this little tab to try and pull it out. But I'm gonna keep massaging this a little bit, see if I can get a little bit more of these ripples out of the bottom down in here, and then we'll jump over and start pulling on that tab. Try and get this nice and close so you can see if this dent is moving. I think I've let it cure long enough. It seems pretty solid. Gotta give it a couple clicks. I wonder, I might move this. I'm gonna adjust that so it's on the front hook. I think this glue has just been used and heated up too many times. It just doesn't want to stick anymore. Might have to grab a fresh stick and try and re-glue this a little bit differently, because this isn't really working how I thought it would, which is a little bit of a bummer. Well, I believe we're on like attempt 24, 25, something like that. This is not going as great as I would have hoped, but that's okay. Update. So this side, back corner, this dent. Bad lighting, either way you look at it. Much better, right? Little dimples and stuff, no big deal. This one that I was working on, I globbed a whole ton more glue on this and had pressure on it and was pulling it off camera, obviously. But I got this dent to come out. I was able to find a hole right up where the filler neck is and squeeze it through without putting pressure on the filler tube or the breather tube. Went right up inside, a long pry bar, this end. Basically stuck it through the hole to where I was able to like push right behind where I'm pulling on it. And I was able to get this thing to move. Now, same thing that was happening back here when I'm starting to move this stuff. The paint's starting to crack a little bit and starting to do some funny stuff, which is fine. I'm not real concerned with all of that. Same back here, you know, little dings, little nicks with the paint. I'm not worried about that. That's the least of my concerns. Now that this dent is kind of out for the most part, if I try and move farther back, there's a little bit of the dent left there on that same front dent. If I try and do that lower portion, it just kind of teeter-totters and it pops the top side back in. So I'm gonna leave this kind of middle section of the dent. It's not super noticeable from like 10 or 15 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet. I don't know. It's not as bad as it was. It's definitely not as bad as it was. It was like a 2-inch deep dent before. Now it's not. So, kind of a success, so-so. Would I recommend it to anybody else? Maybe. So if you're not concerned with the outcome because it's already dented, yes, give it a shot. It's worth it, right? I already had this stuff laying around. I was able to utilize the tools that I have and the materials I have to try and get these dents out. For me, I'll call it a win, even though it's not fully out. I don't think you'll ever get a dent completely out and back to normal. It's just the way that I'm trying to do it, I don't think it'll ever happen. The plus side to doing it like this, now I don't have to pull off this whole quarter panel because it's not just a fender section, it's all the way up to the door. You have to cut out the seam all the way down here, and this whole panel all the way back to about right here has to be cut off and replaced. I'm not about to do that. I am more than happy with the job that was just done a little bit. I'm happy with it because it worked. Disappointed that I didn't get more, but we're gonna call it with that. Now I'll just have to kind of clean this up. I'm gonna get as much of that glue off there as I can, and then the next step is to try and figure out if I want to do fender flares right here and or decals we'll kind of figure that out. I have more of these tire streets and Accelera stickers. Maybe I'll put like a tire street sticker right in the back right there, kind of like this one. Just move this back over there and cover up all this ishiness. And then the Accelera, maybe I can shift that back a little bit to kind of cover up some of this. That's 2 decals that I can just go copy paste right to the back side there, and it might look okay. Then I would go to the passenger side and most likely have to do the same thing. This side is untouched, but I would move those stickers back here as well. So with that being said, I'm going to clean off that glue the best I can and then show you what it looks like without the spotty glue and ishiness on there. Alright, so we got the glue all cleaned off. Much better. Now that the glue is off, you can see kind of the damage from the pry bar inside the fender. Not ideal, but like I said, we will get that covered up with something, and it looked just fine. Overall, I'd say that's a success. We got the majority of the dents out of the car. It's gonna set us up for either fender flares or decals in the back, which is a plus. So we're gonna end it out there. I think today was pretty decent. It's a nice chilly day, but still got some work done on the car. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.